Hey everyone, welcome to the Nonprofit Resource Hub webinar, or Hubinar as we affectionately call them, and thank you for being part of it. It's Sereni and Associates. We're one of the proud founding members of the Nonprofit Resource Hub, or NRH for short. So what is a Nonprofit Resource Hub? We're a trade association whose mission is to serve the nonprofit sector and be a resource to educate and connect its members to the nonprofit community. At the same time, our goal really is to bridge the nonprofit organizations with in the org sector, with each of the helpful resources within the NRH. It's also a good way for us to provide ongoing education and information to the sector. We want the nonprofit sector to think of us as a central point for information where they can go one place and get everything they need to understand, what's going on and what's impacting them as nonprofit organizations. We provide nonprofits with the resources to help their organizations grow and thrive. We have a directory of associate members. These are vetted, trusted providers and advisors who deliver quality products, services, and education to the sector. And as I said, we host networking sessions and events to foster opportunities for collaboration. We host webinars like this. We have a newsletter that goes out on a regular basis. We really, really want to be a full resource to the sector. We encourage each of the nonprofit organizations out there to join and become part of the NRH. There's absolutely no cost to join the NRH for our nonprofit partners. If you go to our website, www.nonprofitresourcehub.org, you can learn all about the benefits of becoming a nonprofit partner. I want to thank our board, Sereni Associates, Sir Tillman Ballin, Nonprofit Sector Strategies, Triumph International Business Consulting, and Vanguard Insurance Agency, as well as our associate members, and there's a lot of them here to look at. These are all, like I said, vetted organizations that do phenomenal work for the nonprofit sector. Without further ado, I'm very pleased to introduce today's speaker, Christine Deska from Nonprofit Sector Strategies, and Darren Port from Powered by Professionals. Take it away, guys.
Thank you, Ken. I appreciate the introduction. And well, I want to just welcome everyone to today's webinar, as he said. We're going to talk about how to align your board and your fundraising strategy, and really try how do we get 100% out of that board. So we're going to talk about a lot of different things, but just really quickly so you know who we are and why we're here talking to you. I'm Darren Port, and I'm the founder and CEO of Powered by Professionals. We're a fundraising and event management firm that focuses on three key areas of service. And those services are fundraising, which is strategic fundraising, event fundraising, and board development. Event management, which is live, hybrid, and virtual events. And we do that nationally. And then the last piece is technology and kind of back office support. And that's making sure you're leveraging technology in all aspects of your organization so that you maximize everything you're doing. But it all really works around fundraising. How do you maximize the dollars raised? We've been around for 19 years. We've helped raise over $140 million for different nonprofits, and we've helped start 14 organizations from scratch. I'd like to let my partner on this, Christine Deska of Bell's Board and Nonprofit Sector Strategies, introduce herself. Take it away, Christine.
Thanks so much, Darren, and thanks everyone for joining us this afternoon. We know that there are a plethora of ways you could be spending your time this afternoon, and we are grateful that you're joining us for this webinar, Getting to 100% and More, How to Align Your Board and Your Fundraising Strategy. So I'm the co-founder of Bell's Board and Nonprofit Sector Strategies. Just to give a brief intro at our business, and my partner Frank Orzo is also on the webinar today with me. We focus primarily on the services side on strategic planning. So we do a lot of work consulting for strategic planning projects. And so underneath that umbrella is very much board management and board engagement, along with, of course, fundraising strategy. So this is really great for us to be able to partner with Darren, whose shop is so, so much expertise in the fundraising part specifically, and now the hybrid, the whole new world that we're all in when it comes to fundraising strategy. On the other side of our business, we also have a board portal product called Bell's Board that we created specifically for small and medium-sized nonprofits when we ourselves, my partner and I, who serve on boards, couldn't quite find the right fit for the organizations that we were serving. So without further ado, let me jump into our deck here. Hopefully I'm sharing my screen. So here's what we'll cover today. The board laundry cycle. I kind of made that up for this deck, but I think it fits. Growing participation and engagement, and it's all about engagement. We'll talk a lot about that and how that cycle is so important when it comes to creating relationships, growing board engagement, which leads ultimately to sustainability and of course more success in raising funds. How to activate your board, and then we hope to have a lot of time for Q&A. So please utilize the chat. My partner Frank has been kind enough to agree to monitor the chat while we're going along. So if you have a question top of mind, drop it in the chat, and we will do our very best to cover it as we go along or at the end. So don't be shy, jump in on the chat. So we're gonna kick off with a short poll question, or a quick poll question, to find out who is on the webinar today, so that we can kind of better tailor our speaking to who you might be. So please check all the hats. We know that, I don't think I know anyone that works in the nonprofit space that isn't wearing at least 3 hats. So I won't be surprised if, I think we've got about, I can't see how many are on right now, but triple the number of selections here. So I'll give it a couple more seconds. Hopefully you've been able to check off if you're a board member, executive director, director of development, if you're currently doing all those jobs. So let's see. Thank you, Kellyanne. Okay, so it looks like we have, okay, a lot of staff, that's the top, but also almost as many executive directors and board members, a nice mix. Okay, very good. All right, we know that you all work closely with your boards, so we hope that this presentation is really, really helpful today. So let me jump in here. All right, so the board laundry cycle. So this is kind of going to be the theme behind a lot of what we talk about today. A lot about engagement. When your board is engaged, it allows you, it positions you to be able to activate your board for your organization's mission, to really have your board, you know, knowing the different aspects of your successes, knowing your organization's background, feeling tied to your organization, having a true relationship with them. And that of course leads to funds being raised. That doesn't mean that every board member has a big checkbook to open necessarily, but every board member has value. And I think a lot of what Darren and I are going to talk about today is how to tap into that value and make the most of it for your organization. So yes, there's a top 10. So Darren and I have put together a top 10 ways to grow board engagement. So as I've just mentioned a couple times, it all starts with engagement, and your organization's sustainability is really directly tied to this. So we're going to go through some tangible ways to improve engagement and hopefully tie all of this together. I think our hope is that when you leave this webinar, you'll have a couple really quick and easy things that you feel like you can kind of activate for your board, or even just one board member that could really make a difference for your organization. So we've got one more poll. You're not off the hook yet, so that we can continue to know and understand why you joined today and what your challenges might be. What's top of mind for you? So what board engagement challenges are you facing? Select all that apply. I don't know that I've ever worked with an organization or been part of one that hadn't faced all of these at some point. I hope you're not facing all of them at once, but you know, every challenge also means there's an opportunity. So hopefully this webinar will help you overcome. All right. Okay, Darren. Securing donations from board members. It is hard. You know, I think a lot of times organizations that we work with, it will be something to the effect of, oh, we have these wonderful folks who've been with us for so long, and now we're trying to transition into a more traditional, more formal structure where we really do need our board members to give, and how to get there and how to have those conversations. And let's see, the second one, board meeting participation. Okay, that's interesting. Obviously, if folks aren't at meetings, you're really not getting that face time with them, whether it's virtually or hopefully in person soon, that you really need for them to be engaged. And then let's see, the third and fourth committee and events are tied. And then lastly is managing and organizing information, but still with 9. So it seems like these are all top of mind. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Darren to jump into our first board engagement tip.
Thank you, Christine.
Sure.
And yeah, so I think what that pointed out to me is that obviously it's all about the money, right? How do we get the money in the door from these individuals? But I want to start at the beginning, and the beginning is you have to vet these individuals in advance of them joining your board, right? So we have to bring the right people in to give us the best chance for success. So when I say that, I want to talk about the first point, which is setting clear expectations and criteria for board members. Now, I don't know what your process is. You may have a great process. You may not have a process at all. It might be somebody recommended this person and we're going to add them. That's how it's going to work. But what we would recommend is that you have a set list of things that go into a letter, a formal letter, when someone is nominated from a nominating committee or from a board member or anyone who's bringing this individual to your attention. And we want to make sure they understand what we're asking them to do. And most people won't take on the position of a board member unless they understand what they're being asked to do. So the clearer you are with what the expectations are, the better the better chance for success. So what I would include is you want to make sure how many meetings a year are you asking them to participate in? Is it quarterly? Is it every month? Can they miss a meeting? How does it work? Are they on the phone? Is it a Zoom call? Is it in person? All those things are good to kind of spell out. And I would be careful not to over ask, because if you're over asking in the beginning, most people are not even going to participate. You're not going to jump in. So it's just figuring out what the right balance is by talking to existing board members as well and asking other nonprofits. How many hours per month? So they want to know, like, am I going to be on the phone with the executive director every day? I mean, I don't have time for that. I have a full-time job. I don't have time. So you want to be very clear that, we're only asking you to do this and this, and that they're more likely to accept if you make it clear the amount of time they're going to be asked. Amount of dollars raised. It is essential. You have to tell people what the give-get is to serve on your board. Now, and you can't be afraid to have a conversation about that, because then you're never going to be able to have a conversation about fundraising when they're actually on the board. This is the best chance to establish that there is a fundraising responsibility when you join our board. You don't have to write an enormous check if you can, but we need to leverage your network, and we're going to work with you to figure out the best way for you to participate. But there has to be a give-get. And now a lot of people will say to me, well, what do we do with the people who are already on our board that we didn't give them a give-get? How do we work with them? I think you give them 1 year, you tell them what's going to be. We're changing the way the board's going to work. You have 1 more year where you don't have to follow that rule if you're not comfortable with it. And then you'll probably have to either step down. You can make exceptions, but you want to definitely, if you want to have as many people following the rules as possible. And assistance in helping recruit. You want to make sure they're your biggest advocates in helping you find new individuals to participate. So that could be through their network and so on, but they have to understand that they have to bring new people to the table. And if each person just brings one person, you're going to grow. And that's how all these organizations grow, by getting good new people involved. And then I know we had talked about subcommittees. That was, I think, one of the first poll things. You want to make sure that you have a fundraising and nominating, a finance, you might have a marketing subcommittee. So you're figuring out what the strengths are of these board members and figuring out where you can place them on a subcommittee, so they understand they're going to work with a small subgroup of the board to help with an area of that they're an expert in. And then they're going to have to provide a mailing list. It may be a corporate list, it may be a personal list, it may be both, but they need to provide a list that is going to be used either for an annual campaign, an event, or something of that nature. That's clear. All right. Let's go to the next slide, Christine. So formalizing your onboarding process. So it's great that you have these expectations, but now what's the process? How does it work? So the board member identifies someone, or someone identifies a potential candidate for the board. We have a formal letter that spells out the things that we just talked about on the last slide. And then we're going to ask them to fill out an application. The more formalized process you have, the more immediate credibility you have with that potential board member. That board member doesn't want to just join the board and think like anybody could join. They want to think they're special. They want to think that they're part of something that is organized, is professional, and and they're not just letting anyone on, that there's a bit of a process here to pick who's going to be. So you have them fill out some questions about their background. You ask for a reference. Even if you know them, you get another reference. You just want them to understand that we have a process. That is the critical piece of this, is that you have a process. The next piece is I'd recommend a call or discussion with the executive director, so they understand the mission, that they understand how they can add value to the organization. Because if they're not bought in to what you're doing, you're not going to raise a lot of money from them. They have to be bought into your mission, and they have to understand your mission. And we'll talk about this further on as well. But we want to make sure the executive director has a chance to to talk to them and get to know them a little bit, learn a little more about their experience and expertise. The next piece is the nominating chair. If you're going to empower people on these subcommittees on your board, you want to make sure that you give them the power to manage the process, right? So they should be meeting with each of the potential candidates, and they should have their own conversation, not with the staff person, but with a fellow volunteer like they are. It will be a little more comfortable for the board member to ask certain questions and to figure out if they're a good fit. And if they really is, I know it asked me to do all these things. How serious are they? What if I miss something? If I can't do that, what happens? You want to have those conversations at the beginning, so that there's not this, you don't want this elephant in the room where people don't know if they should or shouldn't or can or can't. So definitely very important. And then I would have them sit in on a board meeting. If they're at the point where you want to add them, you want to have them sit in on the board meeting, introduce themselves so the whole board can meet them. And then they can be, step off the meeting after a certain amount of time, and the board hopefully would vote on them during that meeting later on when they're not on the phone, obviously. So that's a little bit about formalizing your onboarding process. There's other things to do as well, but since we're on the clock here, we'll start with that as the initial process.
Thanks, Darren. And I'll just underscore some of what Darren said. Setting expectations is a huge one. And sometimes we talk about, I think our hub attorney is not on the line right now. So dare I say a board member contract, but some like to refer to it as a one-pager or an agreement, something that along the lines of the application Darren mentioned really lets board members see, in black and white, what they're being asked to take on very clearly. It really helps because especially for board members who are organized and kind of going down a checklist, they have a really good sense of what you're asking, what's being asked of them when they join. The third way to grow board engagement here is recognize and utilize the different skill sets that your board members bring to the table. This is a great one because I think, like we said in the beginning, it's not always the big checkbook that's the asset. There's many other assets your board members may have, some you know about, some you may not know about. A board member could switch roles if they're still in their professional career, and may open them up to an entirely new network that you didn't know they have access to, as an example. So 2 recommendations that we have for this piece is first being a board matrix facilitated discussion. If you haven't done this before, it can be great you can bring in a senior staffer, someone who's a good facilitator, to go through this with your board, build in some time. I would say about 45 minutes to an hour and 15 minutes. I know time is hard to come by, but this is really important because what it allows you to do is list out all of your board members and list out sort of the wide-ranging diversity that they may or may not have in terms of background, in terms of who knows, who has a financial background, who has contacts in fundraising strategy, all of these different things. And then what it allows you to do is identify the gaps and the needs. And then you as a board, you get that buy-in from your board when you do this all together, can identify, oh, wow, we don't have someone on our board with this strength. This is what we should all be focused on finding together. And so it really kind of brings to light where your strengths are and where you really need to look for some additional members or even advisory board members, depending on your structure. And the second thing is considering a board self-assessment. This is a pretty low pressure way to get something in front of your board that allows them to look inward and think about, you know, we intended to join the board for this particular reason, or we said when we joined we were going to be part of this committee or give this, or connect your organizations. That have we done that? It really asks a lot of questions along those lines in a very non-threatening way. And I'll just plug the Adelphi Center for Nonprofit Leadership. Their website is fantastic in terms of templates. So if your organization has a tighter budget, you're not really able to bring in an outside consultant to facilitate a session like this, or kind of a strategy to grow your board engagement, their templates are just one example of many places online. You could grab a template and get started. Next up, we've got 4, 5, and 6 here all on one slide. So encourage big picture governance. I think we've all heard from different executive directors where it's maybe not lack of engagement, it's my board is involved in way too much. The problem of the overeager board member, kind of a good problem to have if you can manage it. And again, you know, find out what their best asset is, where their value is, and hone in on that. So I have here, think helicopter circling. Now, this is not to be confused with helicopter parenting for those of you who might have young children like I do right now, complete opposite of that. So what I think of is what I learned in business school, which is the helicopter circling above your organization. And when there's an issue, when something needs to be improved that's important, when there's a big strategic decision to be made, overall strategy, item for discussion, that's when that helicopter kind of comes down and lands in front of your organization. And your board should be typically that role, ready to weigh in on big picture strategy. And of course, if there's a problem, they're there to help you sort that out, especially if it's financial or something, an important vote needs to occur, of course. But unless you're in a space where you have a very much a startup with a working board, this is the recommended way that your board can be most effective in being very participatory, but not kind of in the weeds and kind of butting up against the heads of some of the leadership at your organization. Second, number 5 here is consistently reinforce your organization's mission. So we can never assume that a board member is familiar with what your organization does. Remember, these are often really busy people, successful people, well-connected people, but they could serve on multiple boards, and maybe you only meet quarterly. So, you know, a board member needs to be reminded of this. And a great way to do this, Darren and I were talking the other day about how wonderful it is when board members are invited to take a tour of one of your programs, or to see a program at work in the field, to see firsthand the impact that you're having. Nothing beats a story, nothing beats experiencing firsthand how you're impacting your community, your target audiences. So whenever you can invite your board members in, I think you'll find it to be a great way for them to not only be better able to talk about your organization, but understand your mission. And then lastly, avoid jargon. I think it's really easy for a lot of us to start feeling like we know so much about a different industry area, or especially if you're getting government funding and all of these acronyms come into play. And maybe we've all sat at a board meeting where we're wondering, we don't know 4 or 5 of these acronyms, or even the way of speaking. You know, when I first started working on anti-hunger initiatives a long time ago, it was all food insecurity. You know, it wasn't the way that quote unquote regular folks talk. And as a newer person coming into an issue area, we really need to work when we bring new board members in to talk about it like it's someone that's not heard or not familiar, not in the day-to-day work, and making sure that this jargon doesn't isolate a new board member or make it so that it's hard for them to understand the work of your organization.
Thanks, Christine. That was very helpful. So let's continue here. And number 7 is, how do we leverage these board members and their resources? So this is kind of, remember, this is all tied together to some degree, right? As much as they're understanding the programs, they're going to be more able to leverage their network when they understand what we're all doing. So we want to involve board members. I think one of the things on one of the polls was how do you get money out of these board members? one way to do it, and one way that I think really works well is leveraging events. Those are existing events that you have as an organization, and finding the right role for the board members to participate in that event. That's not every board member. There's certain board members that are a little more maybe appropriate for an event or more interested in participating in an event, and they can maybe leverage their network in a way they can't for other components of what the organization does. They may have access to corporate contacts, and by participating in the event, they can lean on those corporate contacts. Whereas, annual giving campaigns, it would be a little harder for them to do that. They may not have a huge network, but they have vendors and partners. So we can talk more about that at some point, but that is definitely something to think about. The other thing, before I get to the next point, is if you empower a board member, they might have been on your board, they're helping, they're doing their thing, but if you say, listen, I'm going to put you in a position here where this is your event, or you are going to be the co-chair of this big event we're having, that makes them appear more important, gives them more leverage to approach their network because of their involvement, because this one they're kind of owning. So it's a great tool to use. I've used it effectively with so many different organizations, and there's a lot of different ways to do it, but that's one example. Helping to pitch the organization to private foundations. What a lot of people don't realize is you may know people that have private foundations, or maybe companies that have foundations as well, and individuals on your board may have access to these people. And if they are talking about your organization, if they're out there saying how they're involved, sharing their involvement with X Foundation, other people will tell you, oh, I have a private foundation, this is what I do. Everyone wants to make themselves feel like they're doing their part. So if you share your part, they're going to tell you what they're doing. And then they might just set you up nicely and say, hey, I have a private foundation that I work with, and this is what we do. And you'd be like, oh, what do you give to? Can I apply? Can my organization apply for a grant? Oh yeah, sure you can. I can help with that. But they're not even thinking to ask you. So some of this is just in conversation and making sure board members understand this is another way to raise money, and it's easy to do. Helping lock in corporate support and sponsorship. This, I would say, one, it could be a organization, a company that wants to help with a type of a mission. They might be into social justice, or they may be into helping children or education. So if you're in an organization that fits nicely with a corporate partner that you either know through your work or through a friend, bringing your organization to their attention could set up nicely for both sides. They would be thrilled. They're looking for the right partners. So bringing it to them can really leverage it. Clearly at an event, you can leverage it even in more from a fundraising standpoint, but more of a partnership can also be set up. Connections to in-kind donors, auction items, celebrities, and underwriting opportunities. This is just literally leveraging their networks, seeing who they know. The more you tell board members, the more you share with board members, the more they can help you. So, you have to spell it out for people. All people don't know. They don't know exactly what to do. And by giving them examples, it might make it easier, such as you belong to a country club, Steve or Susan, and you think you could ask them for a round of golf for our big event? Or I know you do business with a lot of very successful people. Do you think you could reach out to them and see if they'd be willing to donate their box seats to one of the local teams? They're not even thinking that way. So you have to kind of spell it out for them and show them how to do it. And then obviously in celebrities, the only way you get to celebrities outside of paying them is seeing who knows somebody. And your board members may know people. So you want to make sure you let them know we're looking to get in front of somebody. We may have a budget, we may not have a budget, but we want to talk to as many agents or celebrity partners that you may have access to. Offering to chair an event, recommend honorees, new event participants. I touched on this a bit earlier. Definitely helping identify honorees for an event. The board may know of people, and then at the appropriate time, you may want to honor one of your board members. because they're stepping down next year. And now's a chance that you can thank them for all their work. And you know how much they love the organization, and they're going to go out there. Or because of the position that they're in their company for their job, they are in a position to raise much more money if you kind of put them in a different role for 1 year. And then expanding organizations network through the personal network. And that's with them sharing and trying to see, are there other board candidates that they know? Are there people who could join the committee? Do you have a young professionals group? That's another thing that I would, strongly recommend. Anyone they get involved is going to keep them further involved, right? So if you can get them to get people in their network involved, that others will, like, so for example, I used to do a lot of work with Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation as a volunteer. And I chaired this thing, and I was the founder of it, and I just kept bringing my people in. I could never get out because all the people I brought in were on the committee, and they were like, I couldn't just leave then. I brought them in. So it keeps them engaged and involved. And it's a great little method to do that. I did have another point, which I'll bring up later because I'm forgetting it right now.
So I'll jump in. Something that I forgot to mention earlier that's fairly simple and a light lift for staff. If you haven't already set up the board buddy system, so when you're bringing a new member on, or even if you have an existing board and you're realizing that you don't think your members are as in tune with your organization as you'd like them to be, or one another, it's great to set up the board buddy system. And that just means that when a board member comes on or midway through a cycle, everyone has a buddy, and you're asking them to be in touch with that person. And having that one-on-one conversation, or even if it's a triad, it can grow engagement, because then that board member is not only showing up for the ED or whoever asked them to join, they're showing up for their buddy because they have another person sort of holding them accountable to be at your meeting. So 8 and 9 here focus on making it easier for board members to be part of your board. I don't know if any of you have experienced the never-ending search through your inbox for where are the minutes to review. Oh, that was sent in this email. Where's the agenda? Oh, that was sent in this fashion. Oh, we haven't received another document. How are we going to be prepared, right? We're all so busy. Our attention spans are, 7 seconds now. So an easy way to rectify this is to consider a portal or a cloud-based solution where all of your board information is organized. And this is also great if leadership changes, right? That institutional knowledge being stored somewhere. And even more so for communication. A good portal product allows for easy conversation among board members, an easy way to assign projects or tasks all in one place, and kind of nudge board members in a gentle way when something's coming up, when a new document has been added. We're all used to getting notifications, right? It's just kind of the way we all work these days. So why not have all of this in one place and make it easier for your board members to know where to go to get their information, and know that they can get it anytime they need it, and not have to go back through, hundreds of emails to find what they need to be an active participant in the meeting. I'll turn it over to Darren for number 10.
Yes, and I did remember what I wanted to share. I think Frank's going to bring this up at the end, but I did see one of these chats or questions come in, and it really hit home for me, because I've had this conversation with a number of our charity partners. I'm the executive director of an organization, and I want to keep my board small, because if it gets too big, I lose complete control over, of what's going on, and they interfere with everything I'm trying to do. And I know I need more people, but if I get more people, it becomes a problem. So how do I do that? And one of the things that I've seen work is sometimes adding, well, you can do a number of things. One, you can create a corporate board where they don't really have any power to do much except raise money, but you're getting new volunteers involved. You can give them some role, but you kind of minimize what their involvement is. They don't have much time. You tell them, listen, I get how busy you are, so this is why we created this, and it's in a way for you to set up partnerships with corporations, and it gives them a chance to put the fact they're on the corporate board of your organization. So there's pros to both sides, but it keeps you in control. And Frank may add to this later when we'll be done in a minute. Another thing is advisory board. That's a board member that may not have the time or the interest in being actively involved, not a working board member, but more of a board member that has the ability to give and advise. So that's another way. And another way is actually create your board and have an executive board, part of your board, that they have the right to vote. And then there's other people on your board that don't have the same ability, don't have the same rights to participate. And that kind of protects the executive director a little bit more. You don't want to protect the executive director too much, but I definitely understand but when you're executive director and you're basically CEO of the organization, you're running the show, interference from the board can be very challenging. So there are ways around it. So don't think I have to keep my board at 5 or 7 people, because otherwise I can't make any progress with this organization. Now back to this, the 10th point, aim for a clear and concise reporting that honors board members to be your best ambassadors in the community. What we're really talking about here is make sure they have the information they need. So that might be how many children are we helping? How much have we raised over the last 12 months, 3 years, whatever it may be? What's the impact of our programs? You know, how many communities or how many hospitals are centers of excellence for us that we work with? It's making sure they have a couple of real key talking points that enable them to drive home the mission and point out the impact that your organization is having. And then make sure that material is just consistent, that we're all saying the same things, because you don't want the messaging to be, you want everyone kind of talking and rowing in the same direction, hitting on the same few points. That's when they're going to be, it's going to become more powerful if that's the case. So to sum up, and I think we're doing okay on time here, so we'll have some time for questions, and we'll even give you guys 10 minutes to go back to finishing lunch. Takeaways, strong board engagement, right? If you get your board engaged and you have them play a role, that's sustainable, right? You're going to be around for a while. You're going to have good things happen. Clear expectations. That's all of us, right? Even in your own house. If your partner isn't clear with you on what they expect of you, that can cause problems. So you want to be clear and tell them what you need, when you need it by, and how you're going to help them so that you're going to have a successful outcome. A professional process, and that respects their time, but it's also professional process gives you more credibility, gives the organization more credibility. If you're doing things in a way, having Bell's board as potentially as a way to manage your board shows you that you're investing in the board members' time. You realize they're busy. We realize they're probably going to miss 17 emails you send them, so they can just log in once a week and see exactly what they're supposed to be doing, and it's nice and organized for them. So that's a great tool. And then participation. The more you get them involved in either in events, in programs, in whatever it may be, you're going to get positive results. So I guess, Christine, anything you want to add on key takeaways before we get to the last slide?
You did a great job, Darren, covering the high points, I think. And I guess the one thing I would add is whenever information can be visual, we're all used to these infographics now, because again, we're just being bombarded with so much information. If you can employ a dashboard that your board members have access to with just those high-level metrics so that they are clear on your successes, do that wherever you can, because it'll allow them to come away not with the big board book and wondering what they were supposed to retain from the meeting, but perhaps a couple key points to really be able to brag and be proud of your organization. So with that, I'll put up our information here. And while we get Frank ready to jump in, I haven't been able to look at the chat while we've been going along here, but we are happy to answer any questions that have come up. And I'll just put it out there that Darren and I are both happy to schedule conversations with anyone listening that is more shy and doesn't want to ask their question to the group. But it looks like we have at least 10 minutes or so to do Q&A if we have questions. So Frank, anything for us?
Well, Darren highlighted the first question that came in from an executive director about optimal board size. This particular person who posted this question, as Darren said, had a board of 5. Then she considers them advisors and likes a small group. Are there any recommendations either of you have in terms of the number of board members that you recommend?
You want me to take that, Darren?
Yeah, I think we both really comment on it. I mean, my take is that kind of depends where you are right now. I mean, I'd say anywhere from 11 up to, it could be even in the, potentially even in the 20s, depending on how your board's set up. And or do you have some of these other boards that I mentioned? You know, do you have a corporate or advisory? Because maybe some of those people can be moved to a different board. You know, again, not getting too big, I understand that challenge. So probably the sweet spot is probably around 13 to 17 board members, where a lot of boards are set up. I don't know, Christine, if you have other experience from all the Bells board stuff as well.
I would say that sounds about right, because the 13 to 17 are your, you know, traditional board, and then you might have these offshoots of other folks that you use to network with or activate in different ways. And I would just say that it's such a great question. I think if the expectations are set clearly at the onset, you do protect yourself from sort of your board members kind of getting too much in the weeds with you. I think if you're clear at the beginning with what your expectations are for board members and put parameters around that, and it is documented in some way, it really does help, so that board members are clear as to what you are looking for from them and what you've got covered with your own work and your leadership team.
Thank you. Okay, another question that came in is, what are some examples of key metrics that board members need to keep an eye on from a fiduciary or governance perspective? I think, Darren, you touched on this a bit, just as a brief example of, if your mission is focused on a particular area, how do you measure success as to achieving your mission? So there should be key metrics that are easily available. Christine put up a slide, number 10, on the mobile app, the Bells Board mobile app. Right there, board members can have 24/7 access to those key metrics. So that's the second part. It's easy to get to those metrics, but the first part of the question is, what are some key metrics? And please, Christine or Darren, could you expand on that question?
Sure, I'll jump in. I think, you know, we titled this webinar Getting to 100% and More, because we know that's an important participation metric. Is every board member giving, whether it's a lot or a little? That's important. Participation could be a good one to track, but that I know organizations feel that could put pressure on the board, but I think it's a really good thing to be aware of, you know, and without naming names, what percentage of our board have given so far this year. And not waiting till the last minute, whatever your fiscal year might be. But also programmatically, Frank was alluding to that. I think wherever you can quantify your successes, how many older adults you've reached with a given program, or what impact your programming has had in the communities, you're able to kind of extrapolate how your you know, to give an example of an organization, many of us know the Book Fairies, how many books are being put into the hands of children who would not otherwise have had access to those books. So I like a nice sampling of a couple fiscal metrics and a couple programmatic metrics, so that board members always have a sense of both sides of your organization.
Good. We have some other good questions that just came in. This is a good one. To Darren or to Christine, how do you feel about background checks for board members? We do background checks for all our other volunteers because we work with a vulnerable population.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great idea. I don't know how, you know, if it's across the board that people implement that, but I do think, especially if you've done it before with some of your volunteers, that there's a, you know, I don't see a negative in doing a background check, but yeah, I think it's a great idea.
And it could be formal or informal, correct? If you don't have the money, say, to hire an investigative service, you could just do a informal one by asking around, I guess.
And I think it depends on the sensitivity of your mission and how you achieve your mission and how much direct contact you have with different populations. It may not be necessary in some cases. There might be a light way of going about a background check, as Frank said, without bringing in a firm. But certainly if it's required, given the sensitivity of what you do and who you serve, then it's definitely a best practice.
And there is a housekeeping question, Christine. The name of the Delphi site, the website for the templates.
Oh,
And-
yeah. So we'll include that in our follow-up email. It's, but I'll mention it now again. It's the Adelphi Center for Nonprofit Leadership. And there's a specific part of their site. It's templates and tools for executive directors and boards. So we'll include that in our follow-up so that all of you are aware of that hub of information.
Thanks, Christina, which I believe is a segue into another housekeeping question. Can we get a copy of the slides?
Yes.
Yep, I think Kellyanne at the onset dropped a link in with the slides, but we'll also be sharing them in the follow-up, absolutely.
Great. And another question, can a nonprofit hire or put a former convict on a board? Does this have to get disclosed?
You know, Darren?
Where is David Goldstein when we need him?
Yeah, I would definitely check with an attorney. We have David Goldstein is our as part of the Nonprofit Resource Hub, and one of the top nonprofit attorneys in the state of New York. So I would probably go to an attorney for that question just to be safe.
Okay, so that's a Resource Hub question that we can follow up with you on, the person. Okay, here's a question from one of our favorite members, Amy. I'm going to call you out, Amy Zislinski. How do you handle removing board members in a positive way?
There's a couple ways, and Christine, feel free to jump in, but one thing I would say is there's always the opportunity to put them on some other type of board / committee or emeritus role to transition them out. I think if you you recognize them, or you figure out a way to kind of thank them for their time and then explain to them how we're moving in this direction, these are the requirements and so on. So we're gonna, we're just making, there should be rules also that a board member can only be on for a certain amount of years. That's only one of the reasons that's in place, obviously, for protecting the organization. But also it gives you a chance to take people off that may have been on for too long. So having some kind of parameters like that in place as well. Maybe Christine has other good ideas to add.
You covered it really well, Darren. Whenever there's already a transition that's coming up, it's an opportunity to have a conversation, I think. Definitely have terms in place. I know some organizations that actually prefer not to have a limit because they have such valuable folks that they never want to lose. So, but as long as you have a system where every 2 to 3 years you're electing folks, there's a time where if there's a problematic board member or a board member who's not engaged, it's kind of that time where you can make a transition happen, have that recognition piece for the member in whatever way you can, and keep the positivity going. And if there's a way, if there's an alternate way of engagement going forward, great. There are many ways to do it. I think it varies from situation to situation and personality to personality, for sure.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Christine and Darren. Another question, and I believe this person is not related to either Darren or Christine. It's a very good presentation. The slides were great, but your conversation around the slides were excellent. And I'll attest to the fact that that was an unsolicited question, statement, comment. All right. Another question. This is a very timely one. How do you keep your board energized and engaged in the pandemic?
Well, the good part is we're coming out of the pandemic, so that's a good part.
Come on, can't let you off the hook that easy.
But I would say that I don't think your board was probably so upset that they got a little bit of a break. So that's not, don't look at it as a negative thing, that there maybe wasn't as much activity. And, you know, and making sure that there's a plan for when things start to open up now, and how you're moving forward, and that they have a role, and get their opinions and ask them how, if there are, you know, there's so many things we don't usually have time for with the board members. This gives you a chance to kind of get to know them and see what other ways that they can add value, or involve them in some of the things that you're doing. Maybe they can do it now virtually, when before we were never thinking we could do it virtually. Maybe this gives them a chance to participate in a program virtually that you may have. So there are definitely different ways to do it. I would say one other thing is that I know Christine mentioned this, but if anyone's interested, we're both happy to do like a 15-minute quick call with either of you, with anyone, just to answer some specific questions and see how we might be able to assist your organization.
Great. Okay,
Yeah, and I wanted to add something, Frank. You can never thank people enough. You can never thank people enough for their time or recognize them for their efforts. So that's always a positive way to engage with folks. And if conversely, your organization had to have your board members meet really frequently throughout the pandemic for whatever budget crises might have been presented or whatnot, take the time to really acknowledge their extra efforts, because a lot went on during this past year that was unprecedented, and many board members had to put in extra time. So acknowledge that, recognize all.
Great. Okay. And if we don't get to all the questions that come in hot and heavy now, we'll follow up the questions that we weren't able to get to. But moving along, here's another question. With a board of 13 to 17 people, I can't imagine how to meet everyone's needs. I suppose meetings would be basically updates, and then create committees and groupings, such as a corporate board and executive board, as you mentioned. Is there guidance somewhere on basic construction, board structuring?
Well, I mean, definitely as you get to those numbers, you are having subcommittees, and those subcommittees that are meeting separately, where it's a little more of a working committee, and then those committees are reporting at the board meeting. Yeah, the board meeting does not become an open forum with 17 people giving opinions. And I don't think you want that either. I mean, that's the whole point, is if you get 17 people with opinions, they're going to be different. I mean, they're not going to all agree with everything. You know, when we design something, you try to get people's opinion on design. It takes, like, everyone's got a different view on it. No one's wrong. It's just, that's a preference. So with boards, having these subcommittees, have people work on what they're good at, and then having that head of that committee report at the meeting, and that's it. And if there's people that want to get involved and participate in that, they can be added to the subcommittee. So that's one way to handle it.
Good. Darren, this is right up your alley. Giving you how you pivoted your organization to virtual fundraising. Question: best way to digitize your charity to be fully virtual?
Okay. To be fully virtual, I guess it would depend on what your charity does. You know, from an event standpoint, there's virtual events that we've created. From program standpoint, I know a lot of organizations that are moving their programs online. I mean, that's a loaded question with a lot of pieces that I don't know it depends who I'm talking to, but I would say, you know, leveraging technology. There's so many tools out there right now. So figuring out which technology can best help your organization grow. I don't know, Christine, if you want to add anything to that, maybe that I'm missing.
That's probably a good 15-minute chat, whoever asked that, because there's a lot of guidance that Darren could offer you, I know for a fact. So please don't hesitate to bother him about it. Sounds like quite an undertaking as well. So best of luck in going through that transition.
Yeah, that is a great follow-up question, I believe. Okay. And
wrap it up, I think.
Okay, that's coming. Okay, looks like we're let's see, you mentioned
we got just 2 minutes, I think.
Yeah, and they have to and Matt's going to give a closing, so we should.
Okay.
Oh,
so,
yeah, Frank.
Yeah. Okay, good. Let's cut the questions there. If we miss any questions, as I said, we'll follow up. Go ahead, Christine.
I guess, Matt, the floor is yours. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, partner.
We had a very lively discussion, so congratulations. It's great presenters, means you create a level of lively discussion. So it sounds like that you're going to be wanted individuals to come again. So thank you again for the wonderful presentation. My name is Matt Thompson. I work with Morgan Stanley. I'm a proud associate member of the organization as well. thank you again for everyone attending. One of the things that we will be sending out after this, along with a lot of the material, is a survey. We really appreciate responses back to the survey. It's sort of how we judge and come up with future topics. So any input and guidance is always greatly appreciated. With that said, on May 20th, we're having our next webinar discussing nonprofit collaboration as a tool for sustainability and growth, which is sort of piggybacks on sort of a lot of the stuff that was discussed today. That's going to be hosted by Danette and Lindsay, so please register on our website. Also on our website, we've officially launched our job board where nonprofit partners can post jobs for free, and it's easy to find on our homepage. And while you're sitting on the homepage posting a job, please join the organization as a nonprofit partner. It's free for all nonprofits. And if anyone has any questions, please reach out to Danette O'Connell or any of the panelists you saw today, and we'll help you become a member. So with that, thank you again for everyone joining, and hopefully we see you on the 20th.